Welcome back to Prophecy Breakdown. Sorry for the long wait between videos. Let's get to it. We'll dig into Ezekiel 37, 38, and 39 to examine the vision of the dry bones and the war of Gog and Magog. We're also going to answer the question as to whether we're seeing the beginning of that war in the Middle East. We start with Ezekiel's vision of the dry bones, a scene in which God orders him to prophesy in a valley filled with dry human bones, to prophesy that those bones will come together. Check out this passage.
So I prophesied as I was commanded, and as I prophesied, there was a noise and suddenly a rattling, and the bones came together, bone to bone. Indeed, as I looked, the sinews and the flesh came upon them, and the skin covered them over, but there was no breath in them.
The prophet sees a valley filled with dry bones. He prophesies as commanded, and these bones start rattling and coming together into skeletons. Then sinew and muscle starts forming, and these skeletons eventually reconstitute into complete human bodies, but they're still not alive. Finally, he completes the command and tells them to breathe, and they do. They live. Can you imagine having that vision? To our modern senses, it sounds like a CGI scene from a movie. While it didn't involve rattling bones, this dramatic prophecy was fulfilled on May 14th, 1948, when Israel was reborn. The nation-state of Israel had been dead for 1,872 years. The land, spottingly populated by Arabs who today call themselves Palestinians, was likewise desolate and dead, having been neglected by its occupants. The language of Hebrew was all but dead. Today, Israel is one of the most prosperous countries on earth. Hebrew is the official language. Deserts have been turned into farmland and orchards. On the tech front, innovation thrives. The tiny nation cranks out Nobel Prize winners. This resurgence definitively answered a question posed in Isaiah 66:8, when God asked, "Can a nation be born in a day?" If it's God's will, yes, indeed it can. It was. Why is all this important from a prophetic perspective? The simple answer is that the end times clock could not begin ticking in earnest without a nation of Israel. Virtually all of the book of Revelation is focused on Israel and what will happen there during the tribulation. Never forget that Jerusalem is the irrefutable center of the world to God, perhaps even the center of the universe. And never forget that the Jewish people have been, are, and will remain the apple of God's eye. Do not buy into the scourge of replacement theology that claims the church has replaced the Jews as God's chosen people. Satan hates all humanity, but he has a special seething hatred for God's chosen people, the Jews. Do not align with him by discounting the critical role of the Jews as we head into the home stretch. They are the natural root. We Gentile followers of Christ have been generously grafted in, for which we should be eternally grateful. One of the biggest events in Israel's future is the war of Gog and Magog, as outlined in chapters 38 and 39 of Ezekiel. There's a lot of talk and speculation as to whether we're on the cusp of this war right now, and we'll answer that question shortly. Ezekiel 38, 2 through 6, lists the nations involved, with modern equivalents being Turkey, Iran, Sudan, Libya, parts of Eastern Europe, Armenia, and maybe Russia. This alliance of nations is prophesied to come against Israel in mass, like a storm, covering the land like a cloud.
You will ascend, coming like a storm, covering the land like a cloud, you and all your troops and many peoples with you.
This doesn't work out well for the attackers. God intervenes with a massive earthquake. The armies turn on each other, resulting in massive bloodshed. They're hit by disease, then floods, massive hailstones, fire, and brimstone. It sounds a lot like God invokes a volcanic eruption, doesn't it? However he does it, it's a cataclysmic defeat for the evil alliance that decides to attack Israel. Given how it has worked out for those who have attacked Israel since 1948, you'd think they'd learn. But we know that isn't going to happen until Jesus sets up his kingdom. Satan is the prince of this world, and he directs the godless to do his bidding.
Thus says the Lord God, on that day it shall come to pass that thoughts will arise in your mind, and you will make an evil plan. You will say, I will go up against a land of unwalled villages. I will go to a peaceful people who dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates, to take plunder and to take booty, to stretch out your hand against the waste places that are again inhabited, and against a people gathered from the nations, who have acquired livestock and goods, who dwell in the midst of the land.
Now to the critical question. Is this prophetic war imminent? We can answer that question with a simple examination of Ezekiel 11. Speaking to Gog, the leader of this unholy alliance, God says, You will say, I will go up against a land of unwalled villages. I will go to a peaceful people who dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates. Many discussions focus on the unwalled villages mentioned in Ezekiel 38:11 and claim that Israel currently meets the conditions described because they don't have walls around cities like they did in the biblical era. This is an error in multiple ways. First, the era of building walls around cities is gone. God, through Ezekiel, was obviously describing cities that don't feel threatened and thus don't think they have need for security measures. Plus, even if we take the unwalled condition at face value, Israel of today doesn't even meet that condition. There's a combination of literal walls and fences all along the Gaza border, which we well know were horribly breached on October 7th. Their skies are protected by a virtual iron dome. The bottom line is that verse 11 clearly describes Israel living in such a way that they feel secure and unsuspecting. The current reality is far from such a state. While current events might seem to be aligning for the war of Gog and Magog, the crucial condition of Israel living in peace and security has not been met. The war of Gog and Magog, a divinely orchestrated conflict, cannot be imminent as long as Israel is forced to maintain a heightened state of security and vigilance. Something has to happen to make Israel feel secure, to cause her to let her guard down and meet the conditions required for the war of Gog and Magog. A logical theory is that these conditions are met during the first half of the tribulation, when the 7-year peace treaty seems to be working. If that's the case, the war of Gog could easily turn out to be the same conflagration as the Battle of Armageddon. We shall see. In any event, the war of Gog and Magog is not on the immediate horizon. That said, things are changing in this world at a manic pace. Evil that would have seemed impossible a few years ago is now commonplace, not just tolerated, but celebrated. Stay awake, be vigilant. As we explore these profound prophecies, we must do so with discernment and understanding of the specific conditions outlined in the Scriptures. Every element of God's prophecies are true and dependable, not just most elements. Every element, and every element must be met. We also must pay attention daily to the geopolitical puzzle pieces that continue to slide into place as the time of Jacob's trouble draws near. Things can happen in the blink of an eye, and my personal speculation is that this is exactly what will happen. As the Middle East continues to wind toward regional war, I would not be surprised if a charming deal maker popped up out of the Islamic world at any moment with a miraculous deal to finally end the strife in the Middle East. If that happens while the apostate Pope Francis is still alive, I would fully expect him to slip effortlessly into the role of false prophet. This deal would guarantee security for Israel, and I believe it will also allow the construction of the new Jewish temple on the Temple Mount alongside the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. I have a dreadful feeling that Israel will make horrendous conciliations to make this happen, like maybe giving over half of Jerusalem to the Palestinians. Whatever happens, rest assured it's God's sovereign will, no matter how painful it may be for us believers to watch and endure. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Prophecy Breakdown. Keep looking up and keep seeking truth. Until next time, stay in the Word and stay informed. Maranatha.